what are your guardrails for your decision making if you don't have a sense of where you'd like to go? We need guardrails for our yes and guardrails for our no. Without clarity around where you want to go, you will be a yes for things that are good, but they're not your great, or they're not your design or your desire. Welcome to Grad School, a podcast about how to organize your genius for greater professional opportunities and a thriving life. As a high achiever, creative, and multifaceted person, you are always on the brink of your next big project or career move. So each episode, we discuss how to plan, pivot, or progress toward your next big move with confidence. Welcome to Grad School. I am your host, Dr. Fatima Williams. Super excited to be here with my friend, Vicki Johnson.
Hi.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fatima. And you and I, we've known each other for a couple of years. So I'm excited to kind of bring you into my little world of fully funded go-getters. So today, I approached and I said, I'd really love to do a conversation around imposter syndrome and scarcity mindset. So I thought this would be really interesting since you have made many career pivots yourself, and I'm certain have gone through the many ups and downs that most of us do as we move around. And then, for me, I'm the founder and creator of the fully funded course and mentorship program, as well as the founder of ProFellow.com, which is a online resource for information on professional and academic fellowships. So I love to help people find funding awards, not just for graduate school, but also professional development, leadership development, work and study abroad, research, founding your own enterprise, you name it. And I don't know, when did we first meet each other? I'm not even sure when that happened.
Oh, I do know. You and I both were panelists for a conference, a virtual conference, maybe 2-3 years ago with Alante Whitmore from Carnegie Mellon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, she has a great platform as well.
Yeah.
She does, is it Black in Grad School?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Black in Grad School. And I think she is, she's engineering. She does research on auto driving vehicles, I guess. Self-driving vehicles is what I mean to say.
Yes. Yeah. Well, let's get into it. There's so much to discuss about these mindsets. So, and this came up recently in my office hours that I run for my program. And so, you and I think have talked about this quite a bit just one-on-one. But, really, there's both like these mindsets, the imposter syndrome and scarcity mindsets. I mean, they can either be a positive fuel or a negative fuel, but I think we often kind of refer to them in the negative sense. So actually, let's just get into like definitions. First of all, what would you call imposter syndrome, and how does it come up for you in your work and with the people that you advise?
Yeah. So, I think this is not an official definition, right? So this imposter syndrome is actually like psychologists define it. And then, have done enough research on it to really kind of point out signs of it, et cetera. But this is more of just a layman's definition, if you will. It is the feeling that you do not belong wherever it is that you have, where you've arrived to or where you are. So it's a sense of not belonging, but also that somehow your skill did not get you there, or that you are a fraud. Right. And so we hear that a lot, imposter syndrome being about, they're going to find out that I'm a fraud, or that I don't really know what I'm doing, or I shouldn't really actually be here. And so imposter syndrome also for me, it feels like and looks like when I see it in the people that I advise and I work with, also this almost as if we forget all of the amazing accolades and achievements that we have. Right. So it's a lack of ownership and internalizing all of the achievements that you've already had and all of the wins you've already had and the level of expertise that you actually have. So I think it's that combination of lack of awareness and internalization of your own wins and your sort of standing, if you will. And then with that, it's feeling like you're a fraud and like you don't fit.
Yeah. And you really see this plaguing really high achievers, which is almost ironic, but it doesn't plague everyone. So for the people that do grapple with this, what do you think fuels that? Where do you think that stems from?
Well, first, I think, people go through or experience imposter syndrome at different parts or phases of their career, right? So I don't think that it is something that you always feel. I think it's some things that come up when you hit moments of maybe you're trying something new, or you are in a new environment. Maybe you are the only one like you in this environment. Maybe the environment that you're going in has not seen many people like you. So here, if we think about, if you're a first generation graduate student, right, getting a PhD, or if you are one of few women in your program, or one of few identified LGBTQI persons, right, being the only one, right, can be quite challenging, but also not seeing yourself, it has its own effects, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just a personal effect, but it's also because of the structures that are created that and the culture that's around it that may also inform your feeling or sense of lack of belonging. But I do want to kind of lean in there too, that what you said about high achievers experiencing imposter syndrome and the irony around that. So the irony is, right, it's people who tend to be very well qualified who feel as though they're not qualified. But I think what happens here is a lot of high achievers are perfectionists. And so we know what great looks like in our field. We have ideas about who is amazing in our field, whether that is the best performance artist, if that's your field, the best engineer, or the most creative, or the most innovative, right? We have those pictures in our mind because we know them, we're in programs with them, we are mentees of them. And so when we start to compare ourselves, then we start to see lack. And we see places where we feel we don't measure up. But I think the interesting thing often with imposter syndrome, especially for the perfectionist, especially for the high achiever, is that we tend to be, one, comparing ourselves with others, which is not productive, right? I'm a firm believer in running your own race, right? Truly, we have our own pacing, our own timing, our own goals, even within the things that you may be doing that look like what other people are doing. So I'll give an example there. You may be applying to a PhD program in cultural anthropology. That's my field, right? So there's plenty of people who are applying to cultural anthropology, right? Programs, and also for funding in these programs. But as you start to think about how you want to take on the program and how you want to achieve and kind of move through the program, the milestones that you want to set for yourself, it's going to look different from someone else. And so given that our personal goals around these things can be very distinct, our life stories, the context within which we're working are very different from the person that's sitting beside us or the person that we're comparing ourselves to. It does us an injustice. We do an injustice to ourselves, the individual, to then compare to someone else's pathway and process. And also because all of us know that we understand our own internal mindset challenges, right? Even when people say to us, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. You just accomplished this thing, whatever it is. And you're thinking, do you know how hard I worked on that? Do you know how long it took me to write that? Do you know what a challenge it was to get through that? But what people tend to see is the result, right? So I want us to remember that as well as we're comparing that comparison. You're comparing someone else's outward result without knowing their internal process.
I want to just share sort of my experience because actually when I was talking to you about this event, I was saying, weirdly, I haven't really had imposter syndrome in going after the fellowships that I've done. I think because I didn't feel like I had a lot to lose by applying and not getting the fellowship, because I kind of was like, well, then I'll do something else, because I always believed in like the career adventure and that, there's so many opportunities. I mean, so what? I'll go after this. I don't get it. So what? I'll just keep doing it. I'll try something else. Mm-hmm. But where I did experience imposter syndrome was setting up and running, trying to make ProFellow a sustainable organization. And I was kind of going into this field, which I was kind of in like the startup scene when we first started. And, a lot of people in the startup scene are like, going after venture capital and they've got these huge ideas, changing the world. And over time, I'm like, I don't know that I belong here. People are looking at me. I don't have business skills. I don't have business experience. I don't even have experience running a nonprofit. So who am I to set up an organization? And I did struggle with that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And yet what I had to do was like what you said about perfectionism is actually stop trying to achieve some standard that somebody else had set for what is a successful organization or what is not, and just stay true to what I love doing, which is working with people who are pursuing fellowships, winning fellowships, having career adventures. And when I actually got closer to that and just not caring about other people's goals, it became easier, weirdly. So I don't know. Have you experienced that?
I mean, I think you really hit it on the head. You stopped comparing yourself to other people and you connected with your why. You connected with why am I doing this?
Right.
Why is this important to me? And I think too, it's owning your own space. Right? So entrepreneurship is so broad. It's so large. There's so many ways we can define it, so many expressions of it, just like there are with careers, just like there are with fellowships and funding spaces. It's just they're broad and wide experiences. And so when we settle into and own our own experience and our own why, I think we can then focus on moving forward. And so for me, when I work with two sets of groups are kind of where I see this happen. I tend to work with people who are in career pivots, right? So they have PhDs, master's degrees, some form of higher education. And they're looking at, you know what, I think I'm kind of ready to try something else. I want to do something different. And one of the key places where imposter syndrome will come up for them is two areas. It's, oh my gosh, I have to start networking and talking to people in this field that I don't have a lot of experience in. And that's particularly for the career pivot people, right? So I'm not talking about up leveling in the same, trajectory that you're in. I mean, I work with those people as well, but that tends to be a little different, how they experience imposter syndrome. But it's that I don't know how to present myself in this new space. And so therefore I don't belong. Rather than acknowledging all of the work, the accolades, the expertise that has gone into the work you've already done, and then learning how to communicate that out in new ways, right? So you can always bring in expertise and experience from one area and try to find some transferable points that you can talk about in a new area, right? So, but the imposter syndrome will have someone feeling like, well, I shouldn't even be here trying to do this anyway. Who do I think I am? Right.
And really think about who does it matter to? If your goals are, you don't have to explain yourself or justify yourself to every person out there. I would go to like some startup happy hour, explain, what ProFellow is, and people would be like, oh, that doesn't sound very what are you going to do with that? But who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter because I know that this idea is so powerful to me, this thing I built. And I know it's powerful for this unique group of people like you that have joined my program. So it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about it, or if it doesn't serve everybody, or it's not Facebook, it doesn't matter. So I think if we can each find that in our own career paths, like what's our why, what do we want to do? It does make it easier to go from opportunity to opportunity if we're not so concerned about, trying to live up to our idols or comparing ourselves to what our peers are doing or how much money they're making. Speaking of money, let's talk a little bit about scarcity mindset too, because I feel like these two things kind of can overlap because I think they come up for each other. And I was thinking about this idea of scarcity mindset, which I actually had not heard a whole lot about until recently. There's a lot more books and podcasts and things around scarcity mindset.
And I live in a personal development world, so it's like everywhere.
I know. I've been reading a lot more books, so this keeps coming up.
Everywhere.
And usually has to do with money, like people feeling like they don't have enough money. So I see that in the entrepreneurship circles, like I'm not making enough money. But I see it as people saying I don't have enough either time or there's not enough opportunities available to me to be able to do what I want to do. What do you think about that?
So, I think a broad kind of definition of scarcity mindset is it's feeling like there is not enough, right? There is not enough for whatever you're trying to do. So this would look like, well, this PhD program is only taking 3 people. And because they're only taking 3 people, I shouldn't even try, right? Rather than thinking about, well, maybe this program is only taking 3 people, but how many other programs and opportunities are there available in general, right?
Right.
I used to have an advisor who would say I have my doctorate in cultural anthropology. And when I was on the academic job market, he would say, you don't need all the jobs. You just need one job, right? Which is kind of the opposite, is to say that there's so many, but you don't need to master the whole thing. You just need the one that you need, right? And of course, there's still challenges. I don't mean to say that there are not real challenges or that there are not sort of real numbers to some of these things. But I think that the holdback and the barrier is when we approach situations as if it's a zero-sum game, as if you win, then that means I lose, right? So if there's only 3 PhD slots, or if there are only 3 people that they're taking at Tesla this round, right? Because there's only 3, if they win, I lose. Rather than, no, abundance says, even if there's only 3 and I don't get that 3, wherever I go next is still appropriate and perfect for me. Right.
Yeah.
So
maybe
there's
what was meant to be. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because, and also people forget too that these processes, these really competitive application processes, whether it's jobs, PhDs, fellowships, there are opportunities that come from just being in the process. You are getting your name out there. You are meeting new people. This is why I say people use your LinkedIn, get connected, because your network is the most important thing. And also, I think they kind of spawn creative thinking about what do you want to do next. I know a lot of people pursue the PhD because, if you want to be a professor, okay, yes, I see a really clear track. I actually see a lot of people want the PhD as more of a pinnacle of education, or this might be an interesting way to achieve this type of research, or, I just want to move, but I don't know how. This seems like a good option.
That last one is dangerous too. That last one.
The doctorate for
the doctorate, because you need a holding space, a safe holding space to figure things out. It is a very high cost holding space.
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, you should have a clear reason or thing that you see at the end of that. But what I'm trying to say, if that is your reasoning, because you need like a holding space, maybe there is probably other pathways as well, but you have to open your eyes to see them. Like you have to see the abundance out there. And most opportunities that are available to us are not things that other people have created. They're actually things that you create. I see that, there's lots of ways to build your network. There's lots of ways to move into new areas without getting another degree, without, winning a fellowship, without, trying to be something that feels like just hard or too difficult. So yeah, how do we get through that?
You know what? I think even with that, so I think it's important to lean in a little bit on what you're saying here about opportunities that come up, maybe things that are not existent in the moment, to kind of clarify like what that can look like, right? So for us, it's meant creating organizations that serve a need, right? So that's one way. And for some people that means entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, nonprofit, what have you, freelancing even. But then there are opportunities that actually are there, but maybe they're dormant. And I'll use myself as an example here. So when I finished my grad degree, I'd been on the academic job market for a year and I was getting interviews. I said, you know what? I actually don't know that I want to be a professor. I don't know that I want to jump into full-time tenure track. I mean, I was so young. My goodness. Because I started early. I finished college early. And so everything else was just early, right? Everything was just super early. And I felt like the requirements and the environment of the doctorate just felt, and not just the doctorate, but the tenure track roles just felt so tight and so narrow that I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a step back, not going to accept any offers. I will apply for postdocs instead. That'll give me a year to 2 years to kind of figure this thing out, get in the environment a little bit closer, not as a grad student, but as a postdoc, right? Already with the doc in hand. And the postdoc that I was awarded, I found it. It was an existing opportunity. So to your example, it was there, but it was one of those things that you kind of just had to talk to people to know that it was there, because it was like, it was just a hidden opportunity. And not only was it kind of a hidden, I just followed my network. When I found out about it, I just started to inquire and ask people about it. So my point here is that I wanted to clarify that you're not suggesting that everyone needs to be an entrepreneur like you and I were founder, right? Like you and I, but it's knowing what you desire and what you are working toward, having that clarity for yourself, not for the track, but for yourself, right? What is it that I really want out of this experience? It wasn't just that I wanted to be in academia, right? I wanted a particular kind of experience, and I didn't see that reflected in the tenure track roles that I was applying for. And so I looked for other opportunities to find the experience, the holistic experience that I wanted. And so I'm taking time on this because I think a lot of times imposter syndrome and even scarcity mindset starts to get us when we're so focused on meeting an external metric that we fail to think about, what do I want to experience in this? How do I want to experience this? And what do I want this opportunity or experience to build or create for me? Hi there. I don't know about you, but by this point in the year, I am looking for a break. Listen, we have made it almost to the end of 2020. We only have somewhere between 60 to 30 days left in the year, and it's been an intense one, right? I mean, listen, now is the time for us to take a bit of a deep breath, to get our bearings so that we're not running and gunning through the holidays, but instead we can actually take a pause from all that this year has been and then begin to look forward to next year and think about how we want to take our learnings, lessons from this year into the new year. For many of you, this has been a season of meeting new demands around work, around caregiving, around schooling of your children, around socializing in new ways, traveling in new ways, or sitting at home in new ways than you have ever done in the past. And so I really wanted to create an experience for you and for me as well, where we get a chance to have a bit of wellness as well as planning. And so I've created the Genius Retreat. The Genius Retreat is a 2-day wellness and planning retreat that will help high achievers like you and me to reflect, renew, and refocus for 2021. And so what does this look like? Over the course of 2 days, you will join me and a list of amazing speakers as well as wellness practitioners who are going to help us to decompress a bit from 2020, reflect a bit on the lessons that we've learned, the things that we want to carry forward into 2021, and then begin to plan what we would like the beginning of the year to look like for ourselves. I know that many of you are balancing some decisions around your career, whether it looks like shifting jobs or starting a side hustle, or even working on a big writing project that you want to be able to complete come 2021. And so my goal is that the Genius Retreat will do a combination of cocooning you, giving you the space to get away, giving you the space to put a pause in all that's going on around you, and then give you space to be able to think about how you would like to enter into the new year. Most of you already have some sort of planning practice that you do for yourselves. And so what I would like to usher you into is my vision setting process, as well as 90-day goal setting process that will help you to set goals with ease and with grace. We all know that 2021 is just going to look a little bit different. We've seen what 2020 gave us, and now it's time to adjust the ways that we do our normal practice. So it very well may be that the ways that you have tended to plan for your year is not really going to work for this upcoming year. And so I'd like for you to join me for the Genius Retreat as I walk you through the process that will help you to complete some of the things that are on your list, and also to honestly pare down some of the things that are on your list. And so join me for the Genius Retreat. You can find out more about our speakers, more about the wellness practitioners that will be joining us, and even about the amazing gifts that I will be giving you for everyone who registers. So you can go to thegeniusretreat.com to find out more information. I can't wait to see you in December.
I want to go back to what you said about the PhD is like a holding space, because I think I've told you this. I mean, I did my PhD with no intention of going into academia because I wanted to go back and work in policy. But the PhD came to me because I was working with this professor while I was on the Fulbright. And he said, "Oh, you could do your research. I'll fund you." And I was like, why not? This is great. I get to stay in New Zealand. I'm doing research that I really love. I'll have funding. And it was a whole adventure for those years that I was working on it. And I actually really loved working on my PhD, but I intentionally knew that I'm not going to go on to seek out professorships and tenure track. That was never on my radar. I mean, I was still continuing to cultivate my policy network, thinking, okay, I'm going to go into policy work when I get back. And when I got to San Francisco, which there isn't very many policy jobs, I was milking that network that I had in order to get a job in San Francisco city government. So it's not that you don't want to go into anything really like unintentionally. I mean, you should still, even if you're going for the doctorate because you really do love research, but you may not want to be a professor, there are things you can do post-doctorate that are research related that don't require you to move to the middle of nowhere university and be a tenure track professor where you may not actually do that much research. Right.
Well, that's the reality. We need to go there. Like tell the truth about what academia really looks like right now.
I mean, that's what I hear. People are not, I do think that if that's your goal, definitely explore what it means to be a tenure track professor before you go all in on the PhD and what that means. And if you're all down for it, great. But what advice do you give in terms of, I know a lot of PhDs get to the end of their PhD or post-PhD and they're like, oh my God, there's no jobs. I can't find anything. Like, what do you recommend for people like that? Because I think there's a little scarcity mindset, but is it because our blinders are on? We can't see opportunities right in front of us or?
Well, I mean, I think that response is, it's in response to the market and it's in response to the type of opportunities that people want to have. So a lot, academia is an elitist place, right? It's an elitist kind of culture. So when people are saying there's no jobs, what they're saying is there's no jobs at R1. There's no full-time tenure track jobs, R1 institutions in the Northeast, on the West Coast, in these high profile places. That's what people are saying. They're not looking at, so in my program, Options for Success, it's a career pivot program. I have examples of people who they have doctorates from top tier institutions. And one realized, you know what? I really enjoy academic administration. She knew she wanted to be a dean somewhere in her future. And it didn't work out so well. She ended up, for personal reasons, needing to kind of move through a different kind of experience of academia. And when she got down to what she actually wanted out of her career, it was, I want to teach at a high level and I want to be prepared to be a dean. Well, she found independent schools to be an amazing place for that. Mm-hmm. And so, right, it's still education. It is, and for her, she said, it's actually really well-resourced education. So I get to teach children who are, one, they're really excited about it. And I have all these resources to help teach them these concepts. She's like, some of them are like doing work at the 101 level in college that I would be teaching my undergrads. Right. But if she only thought about, because I have a PhD from an R1 institution in the Northeast, I can only become a professor at a similar institution. But when she got down to her core values and what she wanted, she was able to find opportunities in many places. And she is, in fact, today on track for that deanship, right? So it's people are looking at the end stage. And I would say those same challenges are there at the beginning stage. You're just not listening to them or thinking about them, because a lot of the PhD process makes you feel like you are the one who will win, right? In this way, and you very well may be. But the challenge with that mindset there is that you don't create opportunities throughout your graduate program. Instead, you wait till the end and then want a default or a plan B, so to speak. And when I'm working with people in my Options for Success program, I love when I have people who are still, they have maybe 1 to 2 years in grad school still, because then I still get the opportunity to say, hey, there's all these amazing resources on your campus that you can take advantage of, or there's all these, career pipeline opportunities and internships and fellowships that you can do that get you, in touch with different industries, give you an opportunity to test out things, build your network before you actually need to activate it. And that's the biggest thing I can say here is if we're so this isn't scarcity. It's actually looking at the abundance of opportunity that's around you while you're going through your programs in order to say, I am an abundant person. Not only do I believe that there is more available to me, but I am so abundant that I am sufficient enough, expert enough, all the enoughs that I can source a variety of opportunities. I can actually bring in a variety of opportunities.
Wait, let me just ask you a quick question about this. It just came up to me. What do you think about that phrase, fake it till you make it? Because I have to say, I've used that for myself for a long time when I was facing imposter syndrome, but I don't know if it's really that useful, but I don't know. What do you think about it?
Well, I think there's two things. One, a lot of times you're actually not faking it. I would say you're calling up evidence from yourself, right? From your past. Yes. I think for me, that's more important than the fake it because you're actually really not. It is reminding yourself of the evidence that you've done this before.
And you've got the skills and the smarts to do it.
I've been challenged by new things before and I've won. I have faced obstacles and I've won. I have applied for things before that were challenging and competitive and I've won. And I've lost some. And even when I've lost some, it led me to something else that was important as well. Right. And that's not to say that every time there is a quote unquote failure or we don't get something, that the very next opportunity is a bright and shiny object. But sometimes it's an opportunity to reassess. It's an opportunity to gain clarity, and it's an opportunity to kind of reset a little bit and open up your options. Or for some people, it's narrowing them down so you're more focused, right? So for me, the fake it till you make it, I would rather say, look back at your resume. That's what you're really doing. Look back at your resume. Your resume will remind you who you are.
Yeah, I think it helped me when I was as an early stage entrepreneur, just trying to figure out people would look at me and say, well, you have no business experience. You have a PhD. What does that have to do with it? And so I did make it so you make it. I'd be like, I'm an entrepreneur. It's almost like you have a mantra, like I am this, I am that. I mean, I do read a lot in these professional development books that you need to have like a personal mantra, and you might even say it in the mirror, or you might have it on your wall, or you look at it each day and you repeat it almost as the way to ingrain it in your,
I'm always here with a resource. So when I created the Professional Pathways Planner, which is an annual planner, it's a tool that you can use for, kind of calendaring out for the year, just like a daily and monthly planner. But I call it the Professional Pathways Planner in particular because it is really focused on people who are looking to up-level career or they're in an academic process. And so one of the things that I put here in the very beginning, right after the introduction, is my career success pledge. And in here, this is when I post this on Instagram, and you know how Instagram tells you this posted 90% better than all the other ones.
Yeah.
Love it. Because what I'm doing for you is creating the affirmations at the space and time when you probably least have the emotional energy to do so for yourself. And sometimes we need that. We need other people who can speak into us when we feel a little bit like we're uncertain, because we all go through periods of being uncertain, right? But it's when I feel most uncertain, what do I go back to? That's why. And there's about 10
Wait,
of them.
Can you share it? Do you have your most recent one?
Oh, I've got a bunch of them. I mean, I'm one who I put things on my mirror. I've got little notes that just kind of hang out on my phone, because I'm doing things that are important to me. But I'll read one of these that I like. I embrace even the most ambitious of my career dreams. I am open to receiving assistance and mentorship to achieve those dreams. I already have the right networks, relationships, and resources to achieve my goals.
That is true. Yes, I love it. See, God, it's amazing. Actually, I need a clear pledge too. I love what you just wrote down because I think that's great. Because for me, even though I have this career adventure, there's still things I want to achieve. And it's actually the things I want to achieve are things maybe deep down, I don't really feel like I'm really going to do it. But then every time I've done that, I have been able to get to it or close to it or something. So
because we need a clear vision on where we want to go. I don't know any other way to say it. It's like, how can you know what are your guardrails for your decision making if you don't have a sense of where you'd like to go? We need guardrails for our yes and guardrails for our no. One thing that you will always have is a lot of opportunity. People will come to you and say, hey, I think you'd be great for this. Oh my goodness, you should join us, whether it's volunteer, whether it's a board membership, whether it's, something they think that you'd be great to apply for, or even like Vicki, in your case with your mentor who said, hey, you could be funded if you come over here. But without clarity around where you want to go, you will be a yes for things that are good, but they're not your great, or they're not your design or your desire, right? So it's, how do you want to use your time, your energy, your resources? And sometimes I'm not suggesting that we don't explore. In fact, we should. But even our exploration needs to be based around, what do I want next for myself? Not what is possible for me, because there's a lot that is possible for you. There's so many opportunities that are possible for you, but it's what would really have me enjoy. What would really make me feel amazing and great? And like, whether impactful is the word that guides you or successful is the word that guides you, whatever it is. But it's getting clear on what it is for you.
That is so true. And I just want to end on one thing. Going back to your example about the woman that you worked with who became the dean at the independent school, what I found interesting about this is that she, during her doctoral program, had figured out what type of work she wanted to do. And she realizes that actually that administrative kind of leadership stuff, managing people maybe, and figuring out programs and like kind of maybe big picture kind of stuff that you would do as an administrator was much more interesting to her than maybe being an independent scholar, researcher, or teaching, at any level. So she had figured that out in some way. And that's why I think it's important to explore different areas of work so you can figure out the type of work you like doing. Because like you said, she's doing the type of work that she really wanted to do, but it wasn't like at the dean's level at a R1 university.
Right.
So that was like a surprising find, but like, that's the thing. So when we're focusing on where do I want to be, I want to also encourage you all to not think about, I want to be the director of da-da-da. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm not poo-pooing anyone's goals, but try to figure out like, what kind of work day do you want to have?
Yes.
Who do you want to be working with? What do you want to feel like when you go to work and go out in the world? That kind of stuff is actually more important than saying, you might find that you hate being the director of such and such when you actually get there. Because a lot of people are really burnt out in their, once they get in, they're moving up their career ladders and they get burnt out because they don't actually like the work that they're doing. They're just doing what society said that you should do next.
And what society says will pay you well, which let me tell you,
pay you well, which God, you give a lot
know about, about different fields and different areas of work. I mean, it's so funny. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's her 10-year-old daughter is starting a business, and the business is it's a YouTube based business, and she's already generating revenue. That's awesome. I mean, not just like, go buy ice cream revenue. Like, no, she's already figured out what's something that she thinks is fun and that she enjoys. And so I just say, when we start to listen too much to what society says, we might actually miss some creativity and innovation. And then going back to Erica, that's my former student, her story. What's also I want to highlight here is that when she had the idea that administration was important to her and she started looking at independent schools while she was finishing her doctorate, in that last 2 years, she taught one course at an independent school and then went to another independent school, taught one course, and then started just kind of networking softly to get a sense. And so I say this to say, in your looking and in your being open, it also requires a bit of experimentation and getting on the inside. A lot of times those of us who are high achievers, we are thinkers. And sometimes we approach our answers as if we can think our way to them. And sometimes we actually have to work our way to them, or experiment our way to them, or play our way to them. It's not just going to happen by talking to people in informational interviews. You've got to jump in a little bit.
Yes. This scarcity mindset. So we're in the middle of, a pandemic. The world feels like it's literally collapsing around us. So I know there's like a lot of underlying fear about the future. People keep asking me, what's going to happen with graduate school? Is there going to be funding? Who's going to apply? Is there more people applying? Are there less people applying? How can we
what difference does it make? It's like, do you want to apply? Do you want to apply? That's the real question.
And so, but do you think how do we get these very distracting kind of things out of our heads? They are uncertainties. We don't know. I don't have answers. You don't have answers. But how do we prevent those things from having us fall deeper into imposter syndrome and scarcity mindset?
So things were uncertain before COVID.
That's true.
Really, things were uncertain before COVID. So I work in a career space. I help people to think through those career pivots. And I think maybe I can say this as an entrepreneur because I sit on a different side of this, on the side of it doesn't happen if I don't create it. That, the idea that somehow because you have a 9-to-5 job, that is security, that's not security.
No way.
You don't own the method or means of production there, then it's not security. It's a false sense of security. And so I think we have a lot of things that make us feel secure. And something like COVID really kind of upends that. And there obviously are structural and real political and economic challenges that are associated with that. I don't want to seem to be flippant about that. People have lost jobs, right? People have needed to shift out of spaces. But what I also know is moments like these are ripe for innovation and creativity. So I'm in an entrepreneurship space primarily, right? As an individual, not how I serve people, but as an individual. There is probably more money out there now for small businesses to expand, to get support than there was pre-COVID, and access is opened up a bit more. So just like we can find evidence to say that things are closed down, opportunities are no longer, I can show you much more that even says, oh, wow, my friend just sold out her book. Like normally what would take her a year to sell her book, she pre-sold it, launched it through her publisher, and in 3 weeks did what she did last year in book sales through the whole year. Wow. And this is someone with a very large platform, right? So I'm leaning into those stories because that's where I want to model myself after, not after what isn't happening. I want to model myself after where are the opportunities, even in spaces that seem to be tight, even in spaces that are new and different, even in spaces that require me and us to try new things, use new skills. And I don't want to reinforce that somehow we have to do and force our way to success. Sometimes it's just being willing to change our approach. Right. And so I remind myself of those things and of all of the positive evidence that's out there rather than finding ways to rack up the evidence to the contrary. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
for joining.
everyone.
Have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us this week on Grad School. Follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Fatima PhD for more info on this episode and other professional development topics. As always, subscribe to the show and leave us a review so we can continue to bring you the topics you want most. See you next episode.